Hello guys, what's up? Today we're gonna create table cell editing plugin using ES6 vanilla JavaScript in object-oriented notation. So our code will be written in ES6 class mainly. We are not gonna use any library, any framework, not even jQuery. I'm using just Bootstrap CSS for styling this table. So when I click on table cells, it goes in editing mode. When I change something, I click save button, it's affected. When I change something, I cancel, it's discarded. That's pretty simple. When you are in editing mode of one cell and go into another, it's just discarded. So you can implement this later to connect to the backend service and update the data in the backend also. That will be really easy. But right now we're going to focus on the JavaScript manipulating the DOM and table elements. Please subscribe and like the video, and let's start. I am not using any library, as I mentioned, only Bootstrap CSS. So here is my index.html. I have this table already there, and now I'm going to write some JavaScript to make this table editable. And I'm going to do this in an object-oriented notation. So my app.js is an entry script. I'm using Webpack starter kit project for this just to make the development easier for me. It has built-in a server, it has converting Sass into CSS, converting ES6 into ES5, so I can write my class in a separate file and export it from there and import it in my app.js, which is really convenient for me. So you can find this starter kit project in the video description, but also consider that you don't need to do this, and you can write the old JavaScript in a single file, and you can write CSS, of course, if you don't want the compilation of Sass into CSS. Okay, let's start. My app.js is an entry script, and I'm going to create a new JavaScript file for where I'm going to write the class for this table cell editing feature and import it in app.js. Under source folder, I'm creating table cell editing JS and export default class table cell editing, which accepts the table element as in the constructor and saves this table element as a public variable. So for now, that's all. In app.js, I'm gonna create a constant variable of this editing plugin, new table cell editing, and pass the HTML element there. Document query selector table. I'm selecting the table, passing in the constructor, and then I want to create init method on this class to start actually to enable this table cell editing. So I'm going to create this init method, which is unimplemented right now. Let me open the console here to see if we have some error. Definitely, yeah, the init method doesn't function. When I save it, the error disappears. Now, okay, my table has t-head and t-body. So I'm going to actually listen all td elements which are under t-body. So here, I want to actually select and save t-body, not the table itself. Query selector t-body. And in init, I'm going to select all td elements, this t-body, query selector td. Then I'm going to iterate over my tds and first I'm going to enable content editable attribute, set attribute content editable true, which makes the table already editable. I have a typo. Which makes the table already editable. Again, typo. Sorry. What's going on? Query selector all. Excuse me. Okay, this makes the table already editable. We can change something, but we need this nice cancel and save buttons also, and the background to highlight that this table, this cell is in editing mode. So here I'm gonna actually listen to the TD element clicks. Add event listener click, and I'm gonna start editing. So as far as I'm writing in an object-oriented notation, I can create as many methods as I want. So I think that creating methods for start editing will make life easier. So start editing, cancel editing for this particular TD, finish editing. Also, I may want to check if this table cell is in editing mode. So in editing, and okay, that's enough for now. When I click on the TD element, I want to start editing. This start editing for this TD. And what should happen when we start editing? I need to create these buttons and insert this in the TD element. So I'm going to create new method, create button toolbar, which accepts TD, creates this toolbar and appends this toolbar in the TD. So I'm going to create toolbar. Toolbar is document, create element div, and TD append child this toolbar, and this toolbar should have these buttons. So toolbar inner HTML is button for cancel, button for cancel, which has bootstrap classes btn, btn danger, and button for save, which has btn classes, which has bootstrap classes btn, btn primary. So, and additionally, I want to apply some stylings on this toolbar. So I'm going to give the class to this toolbar. Toolbar class name is button toolbar. Okay, I need to create this, I need to call this create button toolbar in start editing method. This create button toolbar for this TD, which will create and append in the TD. And now let's see what happens when I click on TD element. Here are my buttons. Let me make them a little bit smaller using btn sm class. btn sm. Okay, now I want to write some CSS to make this button move down and position absolute. Okay, in my stylus CSS file, I start writing for tbody, for tr, and for td. I want to write now my CSS. So the TD should have position relative, and I'm gonna remove this outline from this TD also. So I'm gonna give outline to 0. Now for this button toolbar, I'm going to copy and paste my CSS for this button toolbar. For position absolute, initially it's hidden, and right now when I click on this, this is still hidden. So the toolbar was created, but it's not visible. So I can make it visible, but I think we need to do it in a different way. So when I click on this, it's already visible. In table cell editing, when I start editing, I want to give a class to the table TD element, which indicates that this is in editing mode. So class name is in editing. So this will help me later to identify if this particular TD is in editing mode or not. And if it's in editing mode, I can display and hide something inside this TD. And in this case, display none, we need to return it. And if the table is in editing mode, we need to display this button toolbar, display block. Okay, and here are my buttons. They are visible. We need additional styles. I want this button toolbar to be in the middle of this TD element, so I'm going to wrap it in another div element. Call it button wrapper, and I'm going to style this button wrapper also. Here in under button toolbar, I have this button wrapper, and now I'm going to give some paddings, background colors, border, and so on. So now when I save this and come here, this is my button. Okay, now when I am in editing mode, also I need to change the background color of this TD element and border also. So for in editing, I set this border and background color, and for button toolbar, instead of display block, I'm gonna change it into display flex and justify content center, so that my button wrapper to be in the center of this button toolbar. Now when I inspect it, here is my button toolbar, and under it there is this button wrapper which is in the center. This is really, I think it's a correct way of doing, because if your cancel and save button text are larger, if you want this for another language and maybe it's a larger, this will increase this button wrapper div element, but we still have this in the middle. That's the main idea. Okay, now we are in editing mode, and the editing works. But as far as we edit these content editable attributes through to the TD element, I assume that, and I think that this button toolbar is also editable. So I can actually delete these elements. So, and we have additional problem actually. So when I click on the TD element, I call this start editing, and the start editing is called multiple times. So here are my button toolbars. Click on it, new button toolbar is created. When I click on this, again. So in event listener, when I start editing, I need to use this in editing method right now. If this not in editing for this TD, then I am gonna call this start editing. And I'm gonna implement this in editing. TD class list contains in editing. So if my TD class list contains in editing, right now I am in editing mode and I don't do anything. If not, I start editing. Now I have this button toolbar. When I click on this TD element, it doesn't create new toolbar anymore. But another problem is that, as I mentioned, we have this content editable through for this button toolbar also, so I can actually delete the buttons, which is big bug. So in toolbar, I'm gonna set attribute. I'm gonna override this content editable attribute for this button toolbar. Content editable set to false. Okay, now when I start editing, my buttons are not editable anymore. Great, so we can start editing for multiple TDs, and now we're going to handle cancel and save. Here's my create button toolbar, here's my button toolbar, it's appended in the toolbar, in the TD element, and now I want to select my cancel and save buttons and listen on event listener. So additionally, to these buttons, I'm gonna give btn cancel and btn save classes to them. Here, I'm gonna btn save. I'm gonna select them. Toolbar, query selector, btn save, and for cancel also. And I'm gonna listen on the click event. btn save add event listener click. I'm gonna call this finish editing in this method. This finish editing for this TD. And for btn cancel, I'm gonna call this cancel editing. Okay, finish editing is relatively easier. So we just need to remove this toolbar from the TD element and remove this in editing class. TD class list remove in editing TD or this remove toolbar for this TD, maybe like this. So I'm going to implement this remove toolbar right now. Remove a toolbar which accepts TD, finds the toolbar TD query selector button toolbar, and remove this toolbar. Great, now let's see if save button works. Save, no, we have an error. Remove on null. Query selector, I forgot the dot for class. Okay, save something. Okay. Nothing works, and I think the reason is that because on button click, it still calls this TD element click. Actually, we finish the editing and remove this in editing class, but then this TD click is called and it starts editing again. So in this event listener, I'm going to accept this event object and call stop propagation to disable the calling of the TD's click event listener. So now when I click on this and change something and click on save, it's saved. Now let's implement the cancel button. So in cancel editing, we need to revert the previous text. So here, if I change here, I have this unturn-it, and when I change something and click cancel, I need to revert it to back unturn-it. So this means that I need to save this unturn-it somewhere. So in start editing, I'm going to save this into data attribute of this TD element. TD set attribute data old value is td inner HTML. So whatever is inner HTML, I save this under data old value attribute. And now in cancel editing, I'm gonna remove toolbar, of course. I'm gonna remove this in editing class, of course. And I'm gonna set the inner HTML to the data old value. So td inner HTML is td get attribute data old value. So we don't need this remove toolbar, because if we set the inner HTML, this will overwrite the toolbar also. So change something, cancel, but we have this in editing class. So let me call this prevent default, stop propagation for the cancel button also. Stop propagation. And let's check. Modify, cancel, it works fine. Modify, cancel. Perfect. So the only thing is remaining to discard this when we click on another TD element. So in start editing, I'm going to find if there is another TD element which is in editing mode, and remove this and cancel editing on this TD element. So this find editing, we don't need to pass anything here. This will return the right now editing TD element, active TD, and I'm gonna finish or cancel editing as you want. Maybe you want to save the changes when you move to in another TD. So when you start editing this, and then you click on another TD, maybe you want to save this. That's up to you. Right now I'm gonna cancel the changes. This cancel editing for this TD. Right now we need to implement this for this active TD, sorry. Right now we need to implement this find editing method. So I'm gonna create this, and I need to iterate over my TDs and find whichever is in editing. So I don't have TDs at the moment. I need to select it from the T body, as I do here, or I can save these TDs under public variables and use it here. I prefer this way. These TDs find which accepts callback for each TD, and I'm gonna return, let me do it like this. I'm gonna return if the TD class list contains, or if this in editing TD, and we're gonna return this. The only problem here is that TDs is node list collection, so it doesn't have this find method. We can see I'm gonna set debugger here. I just want to show you what I mean. So click here, go. We have an error here. These TDs find is not a function. Again, these TDs is node list. So when you call query selector all, it returns node list, and it doesn't have this find method, but it is an iterable object. So here I'm going to use array prototype find call on this TD's element, passing this callback method. So this will actually take the array prototype find method and call it on this TD's node list collection. So now when I save this and I refresh the browser, get attribute on undefined in line 31. And the reason is this that on first click we don't have this active TD, and when we try to cancel it, it cannot be cancelled because nothing is active. So I'm gonna check it. If active TD exists, I'm gonna cancel it right here. If not, just don't do anything. So click on it and click here, and this was cancelled. Again, changed, click on somewhere else, change, and so on. So this is basically the end of the video. We have created table cell editing plugin which can be integrated easily in any API system. You just need to take the ID of the current row and the column identifier. So when you generate the table, if you add data ID to this table, to something, and if you add some data column identifier attributes to all of the TDs, then easily in this finish editing you can get this column identifier and table row ID and make requests to update the actual value in the backend. So I'm gonna focus on this right now, but please let me know in the comments what do you think, if you want to implement this particular feature also, or if you want to implement something else. That's all for now. Thanks for watching again. Please subscribe and hit the like buttons. And if you like the video, please also provide a nice comment. Thanks again. See you the next time.